Well, welcome everyone to today's Manager Playbook Part 2. We are so excited to have you here. My name is Nikki Straza from Straza Solutions, and I help different generations get along at work in its simplest form. And with me today, we also have Douglas Brown. Douglas, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Douglas Brown from Manage to Retain, and I wanted to say thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today, and I look forward to the discussion. So,
Fantastic. Well, we're definitely glad that you are here. And we're going to jump right into our conversation. Can everyone see our screen? I'm going to look for maybe some thumbs up. Yes. Okay, perfect. So we have just a few things that we're going to go through. We're carrying on from our conversation last month where we really kind of dug into the significant role that managers play in employee retention. And we're going to just dig into that a little bit more significantly today as we kind of unpack some of those variables and ingredients in that conversation. And so I'm just going to pass it over to Douglas to share a little bit of insight on both our workplace and our workforce.
yeah, glad to do that. So I think probably everyone here would recognize and agree that the workplace is going through, fairly significant or broad changes. And I would say over the last 5 years, we've seen many changes in the workplaces, and these are driven by many things, including societal change, where people's values and beliefs are changing, to efforts to drive more inclusion, develop required skills and abilities. That's always changing in the workplace. The competition for talent seems to be increasing and growing. I think employees are more interested in creating rewarding work experiences for themselves. The challenges with attracting and retaining talent, the rise of AI in the workplace, and its impact on roles and functions, and inflationary pressures. The list goes on and on. So, and you could also mention in there working from home and hybrid models, increasing stress and burnout. So certainly there's a lot of change going on in our workplaces today. So let's flip over to the next slide. Thanks, Nikki. So along with changing workplaces, we're seeing changing workforce demands and needs. And, we're starting to see more interest in having balance with work roles and home life, or the opportunity to work from home to avoid lengthy commutes, and the desire to have more purpose and meaning in work, to feel appreciated and valued for the contributions and efforts, to have career growth opportunities, and development opportunities. A lot of organizations, or not organizations, employees are really interested in that in their careers. And I wanted to make a comment about some research I was doing that was reported by the Work Institute. And they say what makes this emerging workforce so challenging is that workers behave in very individual ways, and they are very individualistic in the priorities they place and their preferences and their expectations. And in the past, employers, I should say, sought to drive retention and engagement at an organizational level, but to engage and retain employee now depends on the individual employee. So today is much more the enterprise or organization. It's not them that's so much responsible, such as compensation and wellness and programs and so forth that attract and retain talent, but more the personalized experience that employees feel. And today's employees just are requiring much more, and they want to be treated as an individual, and they want to feel empowered to meet their own personal preferences and expectations based on their priorities. So, and the catch really is that, to give you some examples, I'm sure people are familiar with Amazon, where that platform tailors products and services to your preferences when you go on to buy. And I think you see that in the music industry, the movie industry, and so on. So that's really an indication of how things are shifting. So next slide, please, Nikki. Okay, and flip through maybe to the next one. So people that were here for the first part one of this series maybe saw some of this. So I'm trying to try and skip through this fairly quickly. But this first slide gives you an indication of I think you went one too far there, Nikki. Yeah, that's the one. So this first slide shows an indication of how voluntary employee turnover is on the rise. And as you can see here, I think from the year 2009 to I think this ran all the way up through 2023, you can see a steady rise in the number of employees that are resigning from their positions. So I think that's certainly a concern. Now, if you flip through to the next slide, Nikki, great. This shows you that there are concerns about labor shortages. And this is an indication that if every unemployed worker was suddenly working, there would still be 3 million open jobs out there. So workers are scarce. I should maybe rephrase that. Talented workers are certainly scarce. They're hard to come by and they're hard to recruit and acquire so that they're working for your company. Next slide, please. And then lastly, this one is simply a graph showing the increasing costs associated with employee turnover. Again, it's from the Work Institute. It reflects much of that same period that the chart showing the number of quits reflected. But again, you can see a steady rise in increase in the amount of costs associated with turnover. So let's flip through to the next one then. And I'll let Nikki take this one.
Thank you, Douglas. And there's so much interesting research out there right now, and the Arbiter Institute indicates that over half of decision makers agree that evolving a strategy to meet the changing dynamics of the modern workforce is their top challenge. And part of that is simply because we have so many different generations working together in the workplace, and technology is changing work at a rapid pace. So it's just causing a lot of tension in keeping up and keeping a strategy that works. And then we have our global leadership report, and it talks about trust being in free fall. It's a critical risk to organizational success, that trust is the currency of organizational success. Yet, according to research, it's rapidly deteriorating in today's volatile global landscape. From 2002 to 2004, trust in immediate managers took a nosedive from 46 to 29%. And if you learned anything from our first workshop, this is why managers have such a critical role in workplace culture and in employee success and retention in the workplace. We need to be able to trust those that we work with. And another kind of nugget here that we have: organizations that invest strategically to support leadership growth see marked improvements in leadership effectiveness, engagement, and retention. And that those two quotes of researchers really correlate with each other, because where trust and manager relationship exists, there's that retention and engagement. But we have to really be intentional about that investment in our management and in our leadership development. A couple more fun little quotes here from the Global Leadership Report from 2025. So this just came out in January, and it says, creating a psychologically safe environment where employees feel safe to share ideas, concerns, and feedback is critical to building trust. So we're again adding that layer. Trust is so critical in the workplace, but in order to have trust, we have to have psychological safety. And trust isn't merely the byproduct of good leadership, it's a prerequisite for driving employee engagement, collaboration, inclusion, and critically talented development and retention, right? And those are those kind of pieces there that we're really looking at. You might recognize some of these quotes and research highlights from last year or last episode. Just highlighting again the relationship between retention and trust. And it becomes so important that we lean into developing trust building skills and coaching skills with our managers. Last but not least, Leaders who build strong and resilient cultures focus on training their managers into effective coaches who consistently deliver meaningful individual feedback that inspires future performance. And that is at the heart of the conversation that we're trying to have today. Now, there's a few more caveats now that are impacting the workplace dynamic. Douglas, tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really on everyone's mind, both in Canada and the US, as well as it's almost a global thing. I know it's impacting Europe and China and a variety of countries, but just a few thoughts because it is really come to top of mind for a lot of organizations and people. So again, a few thoughts about the current tariffs. As organizations have to deal with additional costs and product availability and other operational concerns as they plan and execute, what their mission is, it becomes more important to have a qualified team with the experience necessary to help the organization remain viable and continue to survive. And these are the people that you don't want to lose. So next slide, please, Nikki. Okay. So you need those committed employees that show up for work every day and rise to the challenge of meeting goals and objectives. And at the same time, it can be difficult to replace talented employees with expensive cost and training required. And talented employees contribute in a number of different ways, and they really can almost transform an organization when they have that passion and experience and knowledge and all those things that contribute to success. And this includes driving innovation with fresh ideas, elevating overall productivity and efficiency. They can serve as leaders and mentors if they progress and help out their colleagues in the organization. They enhance the company's competitive advantage, often helping secure strategic wins in the marketplace. They foster a positive work culture by setting high standards and inspiring peers. And by combining all of these things and these contributions, talented employees really become the catalyst for sustained organizational success. So next slide, please, Nikki. So as I think background a little bit to the discussions today, I think it's important to note what some of the top reasons are. And this is a report by Gallup. So you can find that online if you're interested. And so we see with growing mental health, stress, and burnout concerns, it's no surprise that work-life balance and personal well-being is becoming a serious deciding factor for employees in their careers. And depending on the surveys and who you listen to, salaries and wages is also a major consideration. But I would suggest it does not always explain certain things that we see in the marketplace and certain responses that we get. And by that, I mean, for example, we still see statistics that show, 30 to 35% of new hires leave within the first year. Well, when you compare that to a salary issue, they've already accepted their position. And if they leave in 4, 5, 6 months, you almost begin to think that, well, it wasn't salary because they accepted it and started the role. There must have been some other factors that influenced them. So I think it's always important to note that. And, with the uncertainty in business and the economy and some of the political and global trade issues, there's, concerns for layoffs and job stability. Those are other ones. And lastly, here pointed out that people ought to be able to build their skill set. They want to be able to master certain skills, develop and grow as individuals. And if they don't have that opportunity, they're maybe going to look elsewhere. Next slide, please, Nikki. So again, some additional reasons that we often see for departures. And I will stress that it really depends on the individual. And often there can be multiple reasons of why they're leaving, but these are often unique and individual to every employee. So they may leave if they perceive there's few opportunities to develop or to grow. If they have ineffective, unsupportive, or toxic management that undermines trust and engagement. If they have a negative or unsupportive environment that's marked by poor communication, favoritism, harassment, this can drive employees away. When their efforts go unnoticed or employees feel unvalued, a regular acknowledgement and appreciation, if that's missing, that can decrease morale and certainly long-term commitment. Chronic stress and burnout is another one. And then micromanagement. I'm not maybe going to go through all of these, but I think you can easily do a search online and see the reasons why employees are leaving. But I think if you look at this logically and try and get a sense of why they're leaving and what's causing the departures, I think then you can begin to identify the issues, the critical issues that you're facing, and begin to plan actions or steps or programs that can kind of make improvements and drive success in retaining the talent that you want. But it starts with really kind of some work to do to identify it. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we progress through the presentation. Next slide, please, Nikki. So I always, and I think Nikki will agree with me here, we both feel strongly that managers do play a critical, crucial role in the employee retention process. And these are just a few points. There's many more, but I think, you know, we're going to talk about psychological safety in some of these, but I think you can begin to get a sense of how important they are and how they control and influence and impact some of those drivers that, you know, create the positive emotions where an employee enjoys their job, or conversely create some of the negative emotions and frustrations where they're not happy in their work, they're disengaged, and they're going to look for other opportunities. So next slide, please, Nikki.
So this is just a little review from our last conversation in February, just reminding us of the generational impacts on retention. So for the first time in recorded history, we have at least 4, sometimes 5 generations of workers in the average workplace. So we have boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha is going into high school. So it's only a matter of 5 years, and the first of Gen Alpha are going to be coming into the workplace again, and we're going to be having another disruption. Technological advances always widen the generational gap. You know, you think about it going back 200 or 300 years, grandparent, parent, child had similar roles, and the nature of their work changed very little. But now we speed ahead to 2025, and not only is the work different from grandparent to parent to child, but the way you do work is different. And you could even argue that older sibling and younger sibling are having different experiences. And that could just be a matter of 5 to 7 years difference from the oldest to the youngest, as it were. Considering the generational dynamics in your workplace culture, especially when you're developing managers, is a critical lens to have as you are navigating a workplace culture and navigating these retention challenges. Because the challenge often is that managers and senior leaders often, typically, but not exclusively, represent older generations who see work and see life and have different expectations, values, and language around workplace dynamics. And younger generations are coming in with a different set of reasons for work. They're coming in with different perspectives and different understanding, and they need different things from work than previous generations. And if we don't have this insight on why, how different generations think, we're going to make a lot of assumptions in our leadership journey that ultimately can contribute to some of those reasons for leaving that Douglas shared with us. It's really critical around workplace culture, and it's becoming more and more of a conversation. In my own life, I have witnessed my family members participate in cultures that have been so toxic that they left. I've experienced it. I've had the pleasure of experiencing incredible workplace cultures. And when you think about well-being, spending 8 hours a day in a toxic culture impacts well-being, full stop. And workplaces are starting to grapple with the responsibility they have to care about that well-being and to care about that dynamic. Trust is not a warm and fuzzy nice to have. It is a hard-edged economic driver that creates a competitive advantage. And we are beginning to see that more and more. That is from one of my favorite leadership books, Stephen M. R. Covey's book, Trust and Inspire. Highly recommended read if you get the opportunity. I want to dig into a little bit of conversation around psychological safety and where healthy workplace culture starts. The truth of the matter is, psychological safety and a lot of this teaching is rooted around recent learnings from neuroscience about how the brain works. And the brain is always scanning to determine if we are safe. 5 times a second, it's doing a little environmental scan to see if the people we are with, the environment, the lighting, all of these different things are, am I safe or am I not safe? And behaviors that create safety make a deposit in the trust account between each individual. I want you to imagine a bank account. You know, maybe you have a spouse or a partner, or maybe even a child, and you have a shared bank account, right? And between you, you have these dynamics, and you're putting money in and you're taking money out. Well, relationally, we have a bank account between each of us. Every relationship we have is a trust account. And our actions are either making deposits into this account with that currency of trust, or might be making withdrawals. And obviously, the more deposits we make, the higher the balance goes, and the more resilient our relationship is to a withdrawal. And unfortunately, none of us are robots. So there will be withdrawals. Expenses come up, the tires have to be replaced, the brakes need to be done. That is normal life. Withdrawals happen. If we have consistent deposits of trust into our relational account, there becomes a bank of resilience that enables us to navigate when those withdrawals happen. Unfortunately, oftentimes as leaders, we feel the pressure of getting the product out the door, we feel the pressure of getting the service rendered, and we often make the mistake of putting task before people. We make the mistake of putting task before people. It doesn't mean that task isn't important. It's just that if we put the order of people before task, both things get cared for well. But if we put task before people, we lose the people. And, you know, if one day Elon really does contribute to an army of robots, maybe that discussion changes. But the truth of the matter is, where people are, we have relational bank accounts, and trust needs to be having a conversation in our leadership role. And we have to take that seriously as managers. And so there's kind of a little bit of a math equation that we have to journey through as leaders when we're creating psychological safety. And the first is asking myself the question, am I a safe leader? Creating psychological safety is a very personal journey, and it starts with me, the leader. It starts with me, the participant, the employee. Am I raising the ceiling on my own ability to be safe? As I become a safe leader, I can bring more people into the conversation, and we can then create safety for others and teach them how to create safety for others around them. And the truth of the matter is that intentional connection, prioritizing connection over correction, people before task, that consistent deposit of trust into that bank account creates an environment where mistakes can happen and resilience can happen, but we are preserving the dignity of people in the face of mistakes and conflict. And that is the heart of psychological safety. Can I preserve the dignity of the human I am working with in the face of what went wrong? And this is a shift that we have to take. We have to remember to keep people first and humanize the people we are working with rather than demonize them and label them and maybe call them a bunch of names. As that consistency strengthens, trust grows. It's a natural byproduct of a psychologically safe environment. But the truth of the matter is, it can't just be leaders. Leaders always have to go first, But a truly psychologically safe environment requires everyone to contribute to that. And safety is very much at only as strong as our weakest link. Right? So we really can't guarantee a safe environment. We can guarantee an accountable environment and personally being resilient and learning to become a safe leader. But it's a journey that we're taking together as a team. And it's a real challenge, but at the core of what we're seeing, the math equations look something like this. Safety produces trust, trust improves performance, and high performance ultimately impacts the bottom line of our organization. So if we actually care about profits, but we're neglecting the people element of our workplace culture, we have missed the actual accelerator of our profits. And sometimes, we get so focused on productivity and getting the product at the door and the math and the numbers that we actually forget that trust has a math number associated to it on our bottom line. So here's a few just quick little ways to build trust as a manager. And these have a time cost, but they don't have a dollar cost per se, unless, obviously time and money somewhat in business travel together. But these are things that we all can do. And Douglas is going to unpack a little bit of some of these a little bit later. So I'm just going to kind of skim through these. But check-ins, personal connections, one-on-one. Do our people feel seen, heard, and valued in our organization by you as the leader? Learn and use personal preferences. Across generations, there is a vast variety of opinion around, pronouns and this and that. You know what? Honor and protect dignity of the person in front of you. This creates safety and trust. Full stop. Right? We can get into the arguments, but work isn't where we do that. And you can have your opinions, but how we honor people matters. Recognizing effort, not just outcomes. Encouraging growth mindset and fueling motivation. It is so important to recognize effort because some jobs are ongoing and don't have a big hurrah at the end, but that doesn't mean that work isn't important. Create a no blame debrief culture. Debrief assumes we're circling back after a project and discussing what worked, what didn't work, and how we can do differently next time. But if that meeting is full of so-and-so did, and well, we've all been in those meetings, that is a huge trust depleter. What does it look like to be able to grapple with the facts without assigning blame? How do we model vulnerability and humility? Sometimes we as leaders need to be able to say, you know what? I didn't do a great job in this moment. I recognized in some reflection that I could have done this differently. Maybe some apologies are valuable in this moment. Normalizing honesty reduces fear of judgment and increases trust. Invite input before making decisions. Very, very much our younger generations love collaboration, love contributing, and love bringing their ideas and insights to the table. Our older generations have a wealth of insight, nuance, and expertise. That input needs to be brought to the table. When we actually co-develop solutions together with all those perspectives, not only do we clearly define the problem better, but we come up with much better solutions as well. Similar to what Douglas shared earlier, we want to honor that work-life balance and find ways to ensure that our systems and our policies are actually supporting our value of caring for our employees. We don't want to say one thing and do another, right? And so what does that look like in our organization? And then scratching at something we mentioned last month, open-ended questions. Can we as managers and leaders get skilled at having our coaching hat on and leading through inquiry and curiosity rather than command and control and telling people how things are? Some real insights. I would love to just take a quick moment here before Douglas passes on and continues a little bit of a deep dive on some of these. Are there any comments? And feel free to throw them in the chat or unmute. Which one of these jumps out at you as valuable or as missing or something? Anything jump out for anyone here? I'm gonna see if I can see anybody's hands or comments there. Perfect. Greg, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I
Yeah,
can.
you're good,
Okay,
Greg.
perfect. The one that sticks out the most to me, the reason being is dual-fold, is the consistent one-on-one check-ins. I recognize the value in doing that, not just in terms of ensuring that folks are maintaining forward momentum towards goals or projects, but also to get a better understanding of the baseline of our people and what matters to them and what doesn't. That allows us as leaders the opportunity to understand the difference between a bad day and when they're genuinely struggling, and know when to approach a conversation with that individual if we think that they might need some sort of assistance. The reason why it's dual-fold, though, is that I come from working in the healthcare industry, where despite the suggestions of having these regular check-ins as often as we can, there's often not the time, or at least the time is not easy to find. So it becomes more of a burden on a leader than a opportunity for growth and better connection with their people. I'd be curious to know both of your thoughts on that, and ways that we can incorporate frequent check-ins as more of a bonus rather than something to add to the workload.
I love that. Thank you for that nuance. And I'm gonna let Douglas, because that's kind of where he's headed. So Douglas,
Yeah.
why don't you take us on a bit of a journey and speak to that if you'd like?
Okay, Greg, can I bring that up a little? That's a great question, and I actually am going to try and address that a little bit later in the discussion point. So if we can just wait a little bit, and I'll try and come around to that exact question that you had, if that's okay.
So yeah, why don't we continue? That's great.
Did I see one other person raise their hand there? Maybe I missed
Oh,
it.
that's a good question. Did I miss somebody?
Maybe not. Maybe I was wrong.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Greg.
Okay.
That is
Yeah,
great
thanks so much, Greg.
nuance. So go
Okay,
ahead, Douglas. Yeah.
so as Nikki mentioned, there's many actions that a manager can take, and strategies and recommendations that can help them build stronger relationships and trust. Right on this particular webinar, I wanted to focus a little more on the one-on-one manager employee conversations. And we talked about the trends towards increasing employee turnover and cost, and the importance of relationships and trust, and the challenges in this area, as well as the top reasons employees leave. And one of the best single actions that a manager can take is to conduct, as Greg was talking about, those regular scheduled one-on-one meetings that center on active listening. And in these sessions, managers can set aside distractions to really hear and understand their employees' concerns and aspirations, and then follow up with genuine, actionable support. This not only demonstrates that the manager values the employee as an individual, but also lays the foundation for trust and deeper engagement and a mutually beneficial relationship. So let's explore this one-on-ones a little bit further. Next slide, please, Nikki. Okay, so the first one here, bear with me here, I gotta get my notes. So regular one-on-one meetings create a dedicated space for personalized dialogue. Managers can learn about employees' unique concerns, their aspirations that lead to stronger trust-based relationships. And when employees feel genuinely heard and understood, they develop a deeper sense of loyalty to their manager and to the organization, reducing the likelihood of seeking external opportunities. Next slide, please, Nikki. So one-on-one conversations also provide an opportunity for employees to voice potential concerns or frustrations in a confidential setting. And I mean, we all have challenges and disappointments and frustrations within our work So it's important to have a voice around that you can talk about the issues. And by addressing these issues before they escalate, managers can implement timely solutions, ensuring problems are resolved quickly. This proactive approach prevents minor grievances from turning into major turnover drivers and demonstrates the organization's commitment to employee well-being. Next slide, please, Nikki. So one-on-one meetings allow managers to discuss individual career goals and create tailored development plans to help them meet and achieve their goals. When employees see a clear path for growth and understand how their work contributes to the broader organizational objectives, they are more likely to feel valued and invested in their future at the company. This focus on career development fosters long-term commitment and reduces turnover risk. Next slide, please, Nikki. Now, for years, we've operated under annual performance feedback or annual performance reviews. And I think that's shifting to more frequent, regular performance reviews. One-on-one sessions offer a platform for managers to provide constructive, personalized feedback and recognize achievements. Regular recognition boosts employee morale and enhances engagement and reinforces positive behaviors. When employees feel appreciated for their efforts, they are more inclined to stay, knowing that their contributions are both seen and rewarded. Next slide, please, Nikki. And again, one-on-one interactions provide a forum for discussing not only professional issues, but also work-life balance and personal well-being. When managers take an active interest in the overall health of their employees, it fosters a supportive environment where employees feel cared for. This holistic approach to engagement reinforces employee commitment and contributes to sustained loyalty, ultimately mitigating the risk of turnover. Next slide, please, Nikki. Now, these meetings also help ensure both managers and employees are aligned on job expectations, responsibilities, and performance metrics. Clear communication reduces misunderstanding and creates a transparent work environment where employees know exactly what's expected of them. This alignment builds confidence and reduces frustration, leading to higher job satisfaction and lower turnover. Lastly, I will mention that one-on-one conversations are also just having the conversation is an excellent way to build trust and relationships, which are so critical to employee retention and securing top talent. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk a little bit, and this kind of addresses, Greg, a little bit more about your points that you raised and the comments and the questions that you had. And so one-on-ones we can see have many benefits, and they really provide an open and honest communication. They have constructive feedback, demonstrating empathy and support and so on that we had kind of just gone through. So oftentimes, though, there's pushbacks. And I think Greg alluded to this. Managers, well, we have no time, or there's no cost, or we have other priorities, or, we can't, I'm working on this, and the organization can't hire anybody to do that because of budgets kind of things. And I think I wanted to address a few of these things because I think this is common in the workplace. First of all, these conversations, these one-on-one conversations don't have to be done daily. They don't have to be done weekly. They don't have to be done monthly, but they have to be done on a regular cadence. I typically suggest every 2 to 3 months, you take 20, 30 minutes out of your day, sit down with the employee, create an agenda ahead of time, mark it in the calendar, and then you can have those meaningful conversations with employees. And you can set the time frame up that suits anyone's schedule. But I would suggest that it shouldn't be yearly. And because of time constraints, it doesn't have to be every day, every other day, or every week. But it's important that these are done on a regular cadence. So, and I also wanted to comment that in addition to some of these concerns like no time or staffing shortages, they can be short-sighted to a degree. And by that, I mean, I think that, first of all, organizations do have to hire the appropriate number of staff And I realize that organizations are all doing more with less. That seems to be the mentality today. But sometimes an extra person is hired or needed to be able to take away some of those responsibilities and make the work a little bit more enjoyable and a little bit more productive and performance oriented. And I wanted to elaborate a little bit more on this because these costs of, the extra employee or the commitment to having the manager take time to do these kind of things is offset or it's balanced by the improvements in productivity and performance, reduced absenteeism, improved employee retention, stronger employee engagement, less stress and burnout. All of these things and more have a positive impact on the cost and balances of these regular one-on-one meetings for employees. And it also frees up the manager when you address some of these things. It frees up the manager's times from putting out fires to be able to focus on what matters. And I would say there's two things that truly matter. One, meeting the employee needs. That's important. And of course, second, no doubt, achieving the department goals and objectives. But how we do that is the crux of the conversation. So Greg, we'll come back to that at the end here, and I hope that answers your question, and happy to have some further discussions on that. Next slide, please, Nikki. Okay, so because the manager is so critical, I think it's important to recognize that they do need some support, and they do need resources, and they do need the training and the tools and so forth to be able to achieve results. And I think that, oftentimes leaders are now being put into roles where they don't have any training. It's kind of almost a sink or swim mentality. And sometimes leadership development budgets are cut, or there's other priorities, or no time, as I mentioned. But I think when you understand the importance of these things, you really have to kind of commit to, listen, it's important. We know why it's important. And this is the reasons that we're going to do it. So just a few quick points here. I talked about this a little bit in part one as well, but, manager and employee diagnostics. First of all, managers are not mind readers. They can't always determine or understand what employees are thinking, what they're feeling, what they're frustrated with, what their disconnects are. So there's several diagnostic tools out on the marketplace. We have some. And they serve as it's a tool that can help the manager understand a couple of angles. One, where they're maybe not meeting the needs of their employees. And then you can generate a conversation from that. And secondly, from a more holistic standpoint, maybe where some of those key retention drivers are falling short. And the second point here is that the managers do play such a critical role, but they may not always have the skill set or the knowledge or the experience needed to, deal with generational issues or deal with onboarding problems or understand how they can build trust and relationships through conversations and actions. So I think there's an educational component to this as well. And lastly, I wanted to mention that it helps beyond training to have support exercises and activities that can help facilitate the retention process. So these can be mechanisms for internal dialogue, for discussions on challenges and agreements on, all right, how do we improve this? How do we make it better? These kind of things that are all play such a critical role. And these also help build in accountability into the manager's role, help the managers to buy in because that makes their life a little easier. And, when they lead a more successful department, maybe they have a better opportunity to advance themselves. So just a few points there on how we help the managers achieve the success that we want. Next slide, please, Nikki. And I think this is back to Nikki.
Thank you. So many great insights, and that one-on-one is a really, really valuable tool. And I would highly recommend taking the employee lead on what that frequency is, because each generation needs a different set of frequency and a different set of framework with that one-on-one. So take your lead from them in that frequency, because again, that's a trust builder. You're leaning in and responding to what they're needing and what they're asking. And just to circle back again to Greg, what you were sharing, I really appreciate you raising that time issue. So often the stuff that needs to be done feels overwhelming and feels so big that we ourselves as leaders and as managers are already emotionally on the edge. It is really, really hard to build trust when we ourselves are not regulated. And way back to that equation around psychological safety, the work we do in our own leadership matters. And this is why culture has to be an organizational wide conversation, not just one department or whatever. We as leaders have to begin to have the questions of, are we asking reasonable things of our people? Are we creating space for spontaneous joy and delight? Are we expressing appreciation? Do I know the names of my team? Do I know what they care about in their personal life? And can I take a moment to have that conversation? You know, so often in my coaching, you know, I will be working with managers and leaders and they'll be like, oh, I got to get this and this and this. And I said, you know, I would love to interject a 30-second interruption into your interactions. You know, when an employee comes in and is asking you a question, or when you are having an interaction with a staff member, instead of just jumping right to the work, can you take a moment and just check in? It's 30 seconds. It's, hey, it's good to see you today. That color looks great on you. How's your dog? Good to see you, Joe. Right? Those little moments, a little pause to put people before task and then lean in. Those little tiny deposits accumulate. And if they're consistently delivered, that matters. And the other piece of it is our own regulation as leaders. What is the look on my face? Do people see my stress? Am I managing my stress well? Am I resting well? Am I creating, you know, and expecting and working with my leaders to create this environment for me in my environment? And I understand that's easier said than done sometimes, but these are the conversations we get to have. So overall, we have been talking about the significance that employee well-being and trust are at the center of workplace shifts right now. Safety, psychological safety and physical safety improves trust, trust improves performance, and performance improves the bottom line. Investing in manager training and development creates safety, creating coaching skills for our leaders is critical. Please do not hand your managers a new job without new coaching and new development. Going from being, you know, one of the mistakes I see so much because I work a lot with healthcare and manufacturing is we get people who are experts at their trade, you know, whether it's nursing or milling or whatever it might be. And the only room for them to be promoted or to be appreciated in their tenure is to move them into people leadership. But often they don't have the skills to move from being excellent at their craft to being leaders of people. And it is absolutely critical that we are giving them that support and recognizing if they actually have that leadership capacity to be people leaders. Maybe their expertise needs to be leveraged differently. Consider those generational dynamics. We have 4 to 5 different generations who see work and the world differently, and oftentimes they are the unrecognized contributors to workplace tension and argument and misunderstanding. Even considering something as simple as the word respect. Different generations understand the meaning of that word differently, and it behaves differently depending on your generational norms. And understanding those nuances becomes really, really valuable. Get to know your employees, know their name, know their story, know what they care about, know where they're headed, know their ambitions, and work towards creating an opportunity for their ambitions to be realized within your organization. And then consider the benefits of that one-on-one manager-employee conversation, as Douglas so excellently shared. There's so many benefits and so much value to that moment of dedicated time to say, this matters. Let's talk. What's working and what's not working. And we have, so many things to navigate as we're going about. But we know that this has incredible value. It's becoming a non-negotiable, right? As we are heading into future generations, Gen Alpha, for example, we have the responsibility of training them for jobs that don't even exist yet. The interpersonal skills that are needed to help them have resilience, flexibility, adaptability, and be able to navigate uncertainty are the skills we have to develop now. And we need to develop them in our leaders if we are going to retain their excellent skill sets and talents in our organization. So that's just a quick overview of where we've been. It's been such a great journey to kind of navigate with us. And we're so thankful that you joined us. I did throw the PDF version of our PowerPoint in the chat for you in case that's useful to you. Douglas, why don't you share a little bit about your offer today?
Yeah, happy to do that. So if people are interested and would like some support in that area of one-on-one conversations, today we're going to offer participants a free, structured manager-employee conversation guide. And that's designed to help managers address some of those points that I covered and build trust and relationships. And the link is here. You'll see it in the PDF guide that Nikki's included in the chat. And if you'd like to book something and try it out, then by all means, let us know.
Thank you. And if having a conversation around generational dynamics is something that you want to have a conversation, I would invite you to visit calendly.com/NikkiStraza/strategy-call. I would love to have a conversation about how generational dynamics might be impacting your culture and give you some tools, including our culture audit, our free culture cost calculator, which just helps you put some math to those intangible culture components that are really costing your organization money potentially. And I'd also like to offer you a free ebook called The ROI of Organizational Wellbeing. And it really presents a compelling argument for people before task in our workplace. And so I would love to have that chat. Of course, it's all free. We're just here to serve you and would love to have those future conversations. We have about 5 minutes left in our conversation. I'm going to stop the share here. And I'm just going to pop into the chat just to see Cassandra is adding some thoughts in there. Small talk before the big is an essential part of people business and the people framework. Yes, Cassandra, I agree. Chris adds, as Nikki said, somewhere along the way, we developed an idea that the managers of people don't actually need to manage people. Yeah. When you're a manager, you're in that role because you are now tasked with inspiring, motivating, and developing your team. And don't want to blame the managers. Some of them don't know how, and that is absolutely incumbent on the organization. But when I hear a manager say they don't have time, I realize that they don't actually understand what the role of manager means. And I think you raise a really, really important point, Chris. We have to prepare our leaders and our managers with an understanding of what this shift actually entails and how much it is a people, interpersonal, skill-oriented role. Funny says, thanks, this was useful. Is there a link to the first part? Yes, absolutely. In fact, we will make sure if you registered, or you can throw your email in the chat, and we will make sure you get a recording from part 1 and the recording from part 2 as well. So make sure you throw your email in the chat and we will make sure you get that. Debbie says, thank you, so interesting. A little time in the moment versus a lot of time later when problems occur. So well said, right? And part one this morning, here's the link. Thank you, Greg. That's fantastic. The link is in there. Part one, thank you very much. Wonderful. And we see your emails coming in there. So thank you for that. We hope you found this useful, and we are very much, oh, Chris, I see your hand. Go ahead.
I was going to mention first that Greg had posted the link already, so that's fine. And then secondly, following up on something that Douglas had talked about in terms of setting up a time to speak one-on-one with your staff. And I've talked about this for a long time. You know, when you're a manager, and I said to my old companies, put communicating with your team as part of their performance review for the managers, because that is part and parcel what you do. That's a little draconian, but you still do that at some point. It's always more fun to poke fun at how bad managers can be some points compared to the good ones. So the reason not to have that once a year, I worked at an organization where the CFO had a couple of people working under him, and the year would go by and no comments, nothing else. And then one year they would have after a year, they had their performance review, and he would reach under his desk and pull out a binder. That in that binder was every mistake they had made for the year, some of which had happened a year ago, and they kept repeating that mistake throughout the year. Had there been a conversation a year ago, those mistakes might have ended. And he just looked at this as a way to, well, two things. One, they had a mantra within the organization. They never fired anyone. They wanted to make you quit. So mission accomplished there. But secondly, it was a way to ensure they didn't have to give you a raise, because look how terrible you were. And I sat there and said, my God, this is not, and I wasn't even in the role of communications. I was an editor at the time, but I still knew that was wrong. So it is always more fun to poke fun at how bad companies can get it. In that case, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but don't do that. You know, when you see something that's wrong, even if it's not part, even if you're like, oh, we're going to have our one-on-one in 3 months, address it then. Address it right then, to save yourself 3 months later going, oh, you know, you made the same mistake for the last 3 months. It's going to cost us $150,000 to fix it. No, that's no good. Just take care of it right then and there.
I love that. Craig, did we respond to your question with useful?
Any further thoughts? I know I was a little bit long-winded there, but I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely. It was perfect. Typical response is the investment of time now is going to pay dividends as you do it more. And eventually the idea is that it opens up your people to be more autonomous and problem solve themselves. And instead of come to you with whatever the problem happens to be, they're now coming with the problem, but suggested solutions, because they're feeling empowered and innovative, and that they're part of that process, and that they're not just expected to follow the instructions, instead clear the path for everyone around them.
Yeah.
I love
Well
those.
said.
I love those insights. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. I had a young person who I was chatting with, and we'll kind of end this up, and I'll pass it over to Douglas in a minute here just to close us out. But the truth of the matter is, I had this discussion with this young person. He worked with an organization for over 3 years and was spontaneously let go. And when he was let go, in his exit interview, they cited behavior that they were so frustrated with and never once had mentioned. And he himself said to me, I had a problem with the way I was taught to do this. I thought there was a better way, but I didn't have any opportunity. They wouldn't listen to my ideas. So the very thing he got fired for was the thing he wished he would wanted to change, but that's what he was told to do. And it's just how easy this all can be. It can be complicated, but yet it can be so simple. So thank you so much for being with us. Douglas, why don't you bring us up with a final word?
Yeah, just maybe one final comment. I think these challenges are growing in the workplace. Turnover, absenteeism, disengagement, generational disconnects, these kind of things. But I think that when you look at these things, I think the organization has to decide, yeah, these are real issues. They're affecting our operation. They're affecting our bottom line profits. They're affecting morale. And that's where the the drive comes, or the commitment might be a better word, to say, all right, we'd like to improve this. What actions can we take and how are we going to do it? And then you can begin to say, well, what role does the manager play? How can we get them more involved? How can we support them? So, but it starts with that commitment to say, hey, we'd like to improve these things and go from there. So I'll just wrap up on that note. Thanks everyone for taking time to join us today. Nikki and I have really enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out. We'll be in touch with the recordings as promised, and enjoy your day.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Yep, take care. Bye-bye.